Welcome to Arts2 Envision, the YouTube channel where we explore different art techniques. In this video, I will show you how to make mountains, realistic water, rocks using molding paste and crackle paste and dye. Using a paintbrush, I dip water onto the canvas, letting the dye create naturally images. Once the image was dry, then I could paint around it using acrylic paint. I started with the white acrylic paint. Paper towels can be used to soak up the excess water. Notice how I did not use any paint on top of the canvas before I put on the water and the dye. I used a stencil to create the heart shapes. Now it's important in between the heart shapes to actually dry off the excess paste. Otherwise, what happens, it makes it pretty clumpy, and I've discovered that. If you don't like the image that was created with the stencil, you can just start again. Add a little more crackle or molding paste. Then just repeat the steps with the stencil. For me, the best way I found in order to spread the paste onto the canvas is to use a palette knife. Here's an interesting thing that I did learn. You can pick up different knives that are used for cake frosting, and they are also really good for using it in this medium. There are two ways in which you can add crackle paste onto the canvas. First is adding a little bit of paint onto the paste, or adding the paint after the crackle paste has dried. I found it best while creating water to going from side to side. Sometimes I use a fan brush. My brush has various paints on them. A little bit of a black, a little bit of a blue, and then I go side by side. To make sure that the painting has the same consistency throughout, meaning to say it has the same colors, I will take this black or I will take this brown and add it to different parts of the canvas. Notice how I'm quickly dabbing the paintbrush onto the canvas, leaving big globs of paint. I want to add texture. The color I'm using here in acrylic paint is gold green. I will use the same color in a little bit of the water, also in the front of the canvas where I have some grass, in the sail of the boat, as well as the other mountain. It's best to add the color all at the same time because sometimes you're mixing the paint up, and if you wait and you take the next day, it's sometimes hard to get the exact same color. I love using acrylic paint because it dries quickly and it's a good way to add texture. Since I wanted one mountain to stand out from another mountain, the mountain on to the left has more of a brownish tone, while the mountain behind it has more of a greenish tone. And what you want to do is make sure that you dab a little bit over the line. Like here I'm dabbling over this line of the sailboat, the sail actually. The reason why I want to do that is because then I will paint a solid white over the sail and then add in that texture. It makes it look a little more natural that way. This is an important point, so let me repeat. There are two ways in which you can add crackle paste onto your canvas. You can actually mix the paint with it and then spread it with the palette knife. And then it cracks, but it doesn't crack as well. But if you just use the paste first and then you paint over it, you'll notice that the cracks are much deeper and darker. And I wanted that kind of effect on this painting, so that's why I used the crackle paste plain. I let it dry. About 2 hours is what it takes for the crackle paste to dry. Then I painted it over using different colors. Notice how I have green in there, like on the mountain. Here's some snapshots of the painting in progress. Now I wanted to add some texture onto the water, so I used a palette knife. with molding paste and then let it dry and then paint it over that. Here's a snapshot of the finished painting. Now on to painting 2. Just like painting 1, this painting is 18 by 24 on a stretched canvas. I began by using dye. This time I used a lid in order to create the images of the dye. I first dipped it into a pan of water and then put it onto the canvas. Then I slowly just dipped carefully little pieces of dye, letting the images emerge. Then I re-dipped the lid into the water and then just played around a little bit to see what images would emerge. A paper towel can be used in order to soak up the excess water. Sometimes it helps to move the dye around with the paintbrush. I have before used the paintbrush in order to create words onto the canvas and then toss dye, and it did create that word onto the canvas. Or sometimes you can draw a shape like a flower and then toss the dye in there, and then you'll have a dye made of flower. I wanted to make a straight line, so I used the wet paper towel in order to make this line. It's important to dab off the extra paint onto the paper towel. You can, if you like, hold the canvas up to have the water drip in certain directions to help create the design that you desire. Once the dye had dried, then I used crackle paste and molding paste. Here I am spreading it onto a canvas using a palette knife. For me, because I do not use contemporary frames like the regular wooden frames that you buy, I like to paint around the sides of the canvas. So I dab a little bit of the paste onto the side of the canvas. I do let it dry before I paint on it. Here I am sketching out the sailboat and the mountains as well. When I'm sketching out these images, I don't worry so much about the accuracy. Like, is this boat the exact size of the mountain? I'm just kind of getting a feel of it. Like, where do I want to place the mountain? Where do I want to place the boat? And where do I want to put the foreground with the grass and the rocks? Sailboats are easy for me to draw. I first start out by using 2 triangles. Later on, while I'm painting, then I will narrow down the size of the sailboat and what colors I wish to use. But for now, I'm just doing a rough estimate where things would go. The technique of using dripping paint onto the canvas. It's important to use a lot of water. What I found easy is to put a paper towel underneath the canvas. So then when it drips onto the table, it's actually falling onto the paper towel, making everything a little less messy. Also, I found it helps to turn the canvas upside down. So when you drip, it gives more of a natural look of the sky. Here's a snapshot of the painting in progress. I wanted the sail in the boat to have texture as well, so I clumped on some molding paste. I find it best to use a palette knife to add on the molding paste. When you're finished with a painting, it's best to place it aside and then look at it a little bit later. This is what I did here, and I thought, I was done, and then I wanted to add more colors. So I did, making it brighter. Notice how I'm creating the grass the same way I created the mountains, by just dabbing the brush onto the canvas using different colors. Please ignore my drafting table, as I had it since I was high school, so it has a lot of paint drips on it. But I do like the colors of it. Also, I noticed that my table easel, I use a table easel on top of the drafting table when I paint. I brush side to side in order to add the water. I did have a blue, and now I'm adding a little bit of green to the water. Here's a close-up of the left-hand side of the canvas. I brushed lightly on white acrylic paint to add this kind of frosty motif to the painting. Thank you for joining me in this video of Arts2 Envision. If you have any questions, you can email me at arts2envision@yahoo.com. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for watching.